So first thing we got to do is pop this wheel off, of course. So next thing we got to do here is we're going to let this upper ball joint go, drop down the knuckle, and we should be able to pull the transaxle out in that method instead of having to like pull the hub. Okay, some of the things that we're going to do here is we're going to remove this big nut right here. I think it's a 35 millimeter. I have a 36, and it's just going to have to do the trick. But we're going to remove that with the impact. Might have to put something in between the studs here to keep the axle from turning. Then we're going to have to bust the lower tie rod loose and the upper ball joint. We're going to get this straight here. We're going to be taking this cotter pin out that I'm pulling out now, taking this castle nut off. Then we're going to take this nut here off and bonk these real hard, and hopefully we'll get them to release without having to bust out the air chisel to release the upper ball joint and the tie rod end here. Then what we're going to do is tilt down the knuckle and pull this axle out without removing everything else. We are going to have to put a little bit of slack in our sensor wire here for our wheel sensor. So I'm going to disconnect this bolt right here. Hopefully we can see. Disconnect this bolt right here on the upper ball joint, this one, so I can get this tab off and not pull on the sensor when we drop the knuckle down. Let's get this busted loose. Oh, the joy. It's so tight it doesn't want to come off. All right. Time to bring out the big guns. Go get the big old breaker bar. Got the old breaker bar on here. Got a crowbar propped in between the lug studs. And hopefully I can get enough leverage to bust this loose because these are high torque. Oh, don't want to blow my back out. Oh boy, I'm going to have to go get a cheater tube for this. Joy. So this ought to do the trick here. Definitely going to give us a lot more leverage. Save our back from blowing out. Or my back from blowing out. Boy, feels like something's going to break here and whack me in the head. That sucker is tight. Liking this. Holy cow. Gonna break my breaker bar. Man, not good. Alright, I'm gonna sign off and figure out how to bust this bad boy loose. Yesterday was a total bust. This CV axle nut was so ungodly tight and impacted on that I had to go buy a bigger impact wrench. A torque wrench, 3/4 inch torque wrench, a whole bunch of sockets and stuff. Spent like $300 just to be able to get this off and retorque it the way it's supposed to be done, because those were some tools I didn't have. My torque wrench maxes out at like 120. So anyhow, we're back on the job. Got that blasted nut off of there and had to go ape shit to get it off still, even with the new 1,700 pound supposed inch-pound impact that I got. The only place that was really open today, the place I wanted to get the tool from, was closed. But I went and got this from Harbor Freight, and I'm not too excited about it. It's 169 bucks, and it barely got this off. I was almost ready to give up, and then it finally released. So we're back on the job, and what we got to get loose here is, I already pulled the cotter pin out of this upper ball joint. So I got the nut loose so I can take it off my fingers now. And then this nut I've got loose for our tie rod. And then I'm taking this bolt out of the upper ball joint that holds the bracket. That is an enclosed bracket here. I'd have to kind of destroy it to get the sensor wire out of the way, because our plan is to be able to drop this knuckle and tilt it down and pull the axle out without busting out the lower ball joint. I just don't think that that's necessary. I was able to do the other side with this technique, and I think that this one is going to give it up also. So we're going to get back on it here. I'm going to go ahead and pull these nuts off, spare you that time, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, so we got this nut off here, and the tie rod dropped right out. I didn't have to bonk it. We got the nut off of the upper ball joint here, and we have our sensor wire released so it won't get hung up. Now I'm going to bonk this knuckle, and hopefully that will let loose, and we'll move forward here. So let's see if we get lucky. There we go. She let loose really nice. That's what I was hoping for. Okay, so now we're going to lift the upper arm, get this out of the way here so that doesn't get hung up. We're going to tilt this knuckle. I've already tapped the axle shaft in. You're going to want to take a punch like this, put it in a little divot in the end of the axle shaft, and tap it all the way in as far as it'll go. Now that the knuckle moved, it'll go in a little bit farther. So we're going to go ahead and get it as far as it'll go. There we go for now. There is a washer in there that I'm going to finagle out. There we go. Axle, the new axle we're putting in will have a new axle nut and washer. Alright, so now let's get this upper control arm moved. Oh, it's holding on the brake line. Oh man, I hope I don't have to take that caliper off. Looks like I can release this clip up here and get some more brake line slack. Yep, I'm going to pop that clip off because that'll save me some time. It's a little horseshoe clip here. Being a little temperamental, just like everything usually is. I'll get you a shot of this in a second. Almost off. Okay, so we'll show you what we're doing here. Okay, so we got this horseshoe clip right here. I'm going to pop this clip off and lift the brake line up out of this bracket on the upper control arm. That should give me enough slack to drop the control arm down without straining the hose. We'll see how that goes. Almost have it off here. All right, there we go. So we've got our clip off, and let's give this a tug and see if we can do what it is that I'm trying to do here. Oh, come on now. Let go. It's got another clip on the back. Oh man. I really need to push the control arm up. Alright, I'm going to do a little pause here. Okay, something worth showing you here. I had to put a crowbar in here to push the upper control arm down to get the hose out. And in order to do it, you got to pull the hose this direction, this way, in order to pop it out of that bracket. Just a heads up, it did not want to go the other way. It was so close, but it just could not quite let go. So, okay, we got that out. Now we're gonna let this knuckle come down. I'm hoping it'll come down far enough without being taut on the brake line again, so we can get that axle to move back far enough to actually come out. Got some tension on the line here. Boy, I don't know if that's going to be enough room. Not sure here. Don't like pulling on that either. It's a little bit different than when I did the other side. Alright, I got to figure out how I'm going to hold this up here. 1 second. Okay, so our next step here was to, God, getting this camera in there is tough. Okay, you see the tulip here. Try to get something to point with. You see the tulip right here from the axle. You want to get your, I got it. Sun is just terrible, sorry. All right, so here's our tulip. You push with your crowbar against the head of that bolt, not this plate because you can deform it and screw up the seal, and then you pry against the tulip. It doesn't take much pressure between these two pieces with a crowbar to release the clip that holds the axle tulip to the actual axle in the differential. So I just got that loose. Now what I'm hoping, like what I did with the other side, praying I don't have to take this brake caliper off. We got all that strapped up over here so we're not straining the brake line. But we're going to pull the tulip this direction, drop it down, and pull the axle out that way out of the hub over here. So hopefully this will work like when I did it on the other side. Let's give this a go and see if this shortcut, see if it works out like it did last time. I'm hoping that it does. So pulling on the, gotta get this tulip to release here. Forced to, now gonna have to pry on it. Dirty job. Move a few things here. Push that. Oh, push that tulip back. Not much to pry in. Last time I just wiggled on it and I was able to pull it out. I got to get a different pry bar, shorter one here to get in there. Oh, the joys of working on cars. Hit it with a different pry bar to get it to release a little bit more. So now we're hoping that we can pull it out and drop it down and work it out. Oh no. This is the worst thing that could happen. The axle stuck to the tulip and it came out of the diff. I did not want that to happen. Well, that just changed possibly everything here. Oh man. Not fun. So I ended up having to take the brake caliper off anyway. Sorry about the sun here, trying to do the best I can. So I did take the brake caliper off to tilt the knuckle down just a little bit farther and then turn it inwards to where I was able to get the tulip out, even though the axle is connected to the end of the tulip, which I was really hoping wouldn't happen. But as you can see here, yeah, the sun is terrible. That's what did happen. It is connected still, so I'll have to separate that possibly when I put it back in. Okay, so now what we're going to do is tap the other end here of the axle in and pull that CV axle right out. Stay tuned. Let's wrestle this bad boy out of here, and hopefully my shortcut is going to work in the long run, which I think it is. CV axle through the hub. Alright, now we should be able to get this bad boy and wrestle it out. Okay, well that's a good part of it right there. Now it looks like I can feed it through and drag it out from underneath. Hook this back up so we're not straining the sensor wire. Don't want to do that. Come on now. Get on there. Okay. Strap tight to hold things in place. All right. Now I just got to work that out that way. I have a skid plate that protects my oil pan, and it's just barely touching it, so that's changing my clearances. When I did the other side, I didn't have that on yet, so let's hope that this will still wrestle out without me having to take that off. Very tight tolerances here. Oh. All right, there we go. I have stage 4 cancer, so I've been dealing with that for the last year, but I'm winning, coming out on top, and I am weak. This is really hard for me to do physically, but got to keep moving. You know, moving is what keeps you alive. Sitting around ain't no good. What I didn't want to have happen was the stub axle right here being stuck to the tulip. Well, it is. So I have enough room to actually put it back in the same way that it came out possibly, or I might separate the stub axle first, pop it into place, and then put the tulip, you know, inside. So these are 2 separate pieces, and there's a clip in here holding this stub axle on. So I'm going to make that decision here as I prep the new axle. You can see what happened to this one. I 4-wheel drive this thing pretty hard. It broke the tulip. I mean, it's been in there for 4 years, but it cracked this hole and it was throwing grease out. And I'm like, God, the boots are good. And then I finally noticed that hole and this big crack going right through here. So I was like, uh-oh, time to replace that. Had a silicone boot put on here. Boy, those last a long time. I'm going to go back to the brand new one that has the neoprene ones. They say that they're stronger than they used to be, or tougher, and we're going to find out. But if not, I'll put these silicones back in. A friend of mine got them for me, and I don't know where in the heck he got them. Going to have to figure that out. Okay, going to go prep the new axle. One thing I'm really big on, and I suggest this to all of you, is get some of these, order these clips, these C-clips. They're a pain in the ass to find. Usually got to get them online. None of the auto parts store have them. Now I'm removing one of them right now, right here, because I've had one of these in the tulip come unclipped once. There's the clip there. I had one come unclipped and the tulip came out and the axle actually dropped out on the passenger side and was clunking and banging around underneath the van. I was out of town and was going boating, and it was a really bad place for it to happen. I had to crawl underneath there and figure out a way to loosen everything on the pumpkin and the main axle tube, flex it over with a crowbar, get the tulip back up over the axle, which I did, which was amazing, and then put a bell-shaped anchor up against the inside of my passenger side tire, and had my son turn the wheel while I had a crowbar between there and the tulip to push the tulip into place and snap it back in. It was creative, but a pain in the butt. So you always want to take and pop these clips off and put new clips on, because if they let loose, it's a real pain. I do not like this design, but it is what it is, and we have to make the best of it. But I always put new clips on and suggest that highly to you. The part number for these new clips is right here. So we got 14049, That's your part number for GM, or a cross-reference number sometimes too, and you can find these online. They only had, I think, 3 of them that I could get from this one vendor. Some places are asking $20 for these, and I'm like, you guys are just evil, you know, that's not cool. Some places they're $1.49. These were, I think, $7 a piece, but I got 3, and that's all that I need to get this done, but I'm going to get some more and keep them on hand. Okay, we're going to prep this, get this stub axle put back in, and then start with our new tulip. To get this stub axle out, what I did is I took it and clamped it into my vise. You can see the rest of the CV down there. Clamped the stub axle into the vise, and then I hit the tulip down here a couple times, and it just dropped right off, of course, and let the was let loose by the clips. So we took our axle stub, I got the new clips on there, and we just pushed it in. I felt the spline index. Now I've got to put a punch in the end of it there and hit it with a punch in it hammer until that clip snaps into place. So that's what we're going to do next here. Sun is just raging. I'm hoping that you'll be able to see this. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our punch in the end of the axle, and then got to hit it into place. There it goes. Got to make sure that we hit it hard enough to where that clip went into place. When I pull it, boy, it sure feels like it's in place. It ain't coming out. I'm going to give it a couple little love taps here for good measure. Get that hammer in there. There we go. Those are just light taps, nothing that would hurt the end of the spline. All right, that sucker ain't coming out. I can feel that that clip is snapped into position. So now we're good to get our tulip in here, and we're going to pull the axle in through this way, back into the hub, and then tap that tulip in. And that saves us from busting out this lower ball joint, which, hey, any short steps that we can take, man, I'll sure take them. And that saved me some time that's working out. All right, I'm going to go get that axle. Right, hopefully you can see this. I've got the transaxle fed through, came up through here, up in. Now I'm feeding the spline end over here into the hub. And once I get that all the way in here, I might have to drop the knuckle again. I'll be able to lift the tulip up, put it over the end of the axle, and slide it through the seal. Then I just got to tap the tulip real hard to get it to seat. So hopefully this should be smoother and easier than when it all came out, because it came out with the other end of the axle on it. So I'll have more room now. All right, see how beautiful that is? Okay, so now we just need to index our spline, get get that to line up. Just not very strong these days. Okay, had to do a change in plans here. Unfortunately, putting this end of the transaxle into the hub first and then putting the other end in and tapping the tulip in, it just would not work. So I had to pull the tulip out here, pull the axle out, and then pull the axle end out of here, drop the knuckle down and out of the way, which you're able to do. You got to move the upper control arm up pretty high and then get the transaxle at a straight shot, the best straight shot you can get. Put the nut, the big nut here, on the end of your axle so it's flush with the end of the axle. And then I took my my mini sledge here and just pounded and pounded and pounded and pounded on the end of the axle with the nut on, with the knuckle dropped out of the way, and finally got those clips to snap into the axle at the pumpkin. Then you're able to actually swing the end of the transaxle through the hub hole, push your knuckle back up on, okay, and tighten, put your tie rod in, and put your ball joint in and get the bolts, the nuts started. I didn't think that you could actually do it that direction. I thought that it had to go into the hub and then into the pumpkin. But you can do it the other way around and pound that sucker right in. And when you put new clips on, they fit tighter because you had to bend them out to get them over the axle. So it takes more pressure to pound the end of the axle where you have the old nut on here, so you don't damage or mushroom this out. You know what I mean? It helps protect everything, and bam, 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 popped into place. And then you can put the end of the axle through the hub, like I said, and then push the knuckle on. So you can do this without busting out the bottom ball joint. If I would have done that the first time, I would have got it in quicker. But realizing that putting a crowbar in here on that tiny little ledge of the tulip and pounding on it, it just was not going to go in. With the old clips, it would have popped in. I probably could have pushed it in with my hands. Boy, with these new ones, it just didn't work out that way. So now what we'll end up doing is not too much, really. We got to tighten this tie rod end nut to torque. Then we've got to tighten this nut right here. Can't get a torque wrench in there, so you just got to be common sense with what you're going to put on your wrench for your torque. Line up your castle nut with the cotter pin hole and put your cotter pin in. Then we're going to take and rebolt this in its position right here. Put the sensor wires back into their clips. And then we just got a couple little clips here for our brake to put it back into position. And we're pretty much done other than putting the wheel on. So this is a very doable thing in your driveway. Just do it the direction that I did not the first time. Now my other side, no problem with that. But boy, this side, it did not want to cooperate with putting the tulip into the pumpkin first. Or trying to pound that side in first. Okay, so now we just got to tighten our tie rod nut here. I'm going to go look up the torque spec on that, finish that one off. And then we got to grab a big old 1-inch wrench, and you're going to get inside here, and we're going to tighten that nut and crank that sucker down, then put our cotter pin back into it. So the tie rod end calls for 35 foot-pounds of torque. So that's what we're going to get on here. There we go. Okay, so that one's done. Now we just got to do the back one, and then the outer nut is like 220 pounds. Got a new torque wrench for that bad boy. Had 2 impact guns, and neither one of them were strong enough. Harbor Freight was the only place I could score something at today, but I didn't think that this Quake was going to do it. They say 1,700 pounds of reverse torque, and I'm like, I don't know about that, but right when I was ready to give up, it actually took that nut off, so saved the day. But Jesus, spent $300 by the time I bought this for $169. Then I paid like $90 for the torque wrench because it was a Pittsburgh brand. It's not like I'm taking telephone poles down in the neighborhood. Don't need that sucker. Probably won't use it again for a long time. And then I bought a whole set of sockets here, brand new, to cover 35 and 36. Good thing I did that because 35 was what I took off. And the new transaxle took a 36 millimeter nut. So sorry about running into the dark here. Just had a few stumbling blocks that slowed me up. But we're all set. We got our brake line back in here. We got our tie rod end tightened down. We got our upper ball joint nut cranked down and got our cotter pin in there. So we are all set to go. All we got to do now is just put the wheel on, and then tomorrow I'm going to take the differential fluid out and put some in that doesn't have as much limited slip additive in it to see if the limited slip might get a little bit more grabby. It's a little slippery. So we're going to see if that's going to work out. And then tomorrow we're going to do a transmission mount. Actually found a polyurethane one to go with our polyurethane motor mounts. I'm going to do an update on how that worked out. And the S10 of the same year, four-wheel drive, the transmission mount is the same as these vans because they don't list a transmission mount that's polyurethane for the vans. So keep tuned, subscribe, and I'm going to give up some of that information tomorrow. But thanks for watching. I hope this helps you out. Sorry we ran into the dark time. And till next time, we will see you. So subscribe.